Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit. And the
Hey guys,
ain't
welcome
hit
to
yet.
another huge episode of Triggered. I hope everyone's doing well on this Tuesday. A little bit unusual again, but as you might have seen, I was in Washington, D.C. I decided to have, a little sleepover at Dad's house, also the White House. You may have seen the video. It was actually really cool. Some sleepovers just hit a little bit harder than others, and so this was kind of a unique one. You don't usually get to show up to the sleepover in Marine One or helicopters in general, but even in my life, that doesn't happen all that often. So it was kind of a cool one. But we have a big show today. It's also Cinco de Mayo. I don't know, you've probably seen one of the original, yes, it was the 2015 meme about the Trump Tower taco bowls. My father loved the Hispanics. So the anniversary of one of the greatest tweets of all time. So, grab your Trump Tower taco bowl if you can, maybe a margarita or some sort of Latin beer, and we can have some fun, but may make the show a little bit more interesting. And like I said, so much is happening. I'm hopping on whenever I can to give you the latest news. Again, this last two shows, sorry that they've been a little bit off schedule. My travel schedule's been nuts, so nuts that I couldn't actually even accommodate the normal days, and I usually make a pretty strong effort to stay consistent for you guys, but hopefully you'll forgive me. Maybe Tuesday's a big day. You never know. So anyway, I'm glad you're here. So it's pretty interesting. You have your favorite president walking through Doral, meeting normal, common sense Americans, pushing peace through strength, making deals, getting value for taxpayers, and really telling the world very clearly that America is not getting pushed around anymore. On the other side, as always, you have Democrats doing what Democrats do. They basically broke an airline. Okay? You heard about Spirit Airlines. They tried to break DHS. They break the border. They break basic election law, and then they go on TV and have their lapdogs in the media, push their narrative and lecture you about compassion and democracy and the experts, their expertise. It's done so much great things for us over the last few decades. I can't name any of those things. Neither can you, neither can anyone else, but that doesn't seem to ever matter to them. It's the same pattern every time. They create the problem. They find a way to profit from the chaos, and then they blame you for noticing when nothing actually ever gets fixed. So we'll get into all of that today. So make sure you guys are liking, sharing, subscribing, okay? Like so that we get the message out there. Share for the same reasons, okay? You guys are the part of that. Subscribe so you never miss one of these shows or episodes. If you do miss the show here on Rumble, if your friends get their podcast, perhaps in different ways, go over to Apple, go over to Spotify Podcasts, catch it there, share from there. You know the drill, okay? For all of the top headlines that we cover on the show, go over to my news app, MXM News, like minute by minute, where you can get the mainstream news without the mainstream bias. And of course, don't forget about our brave sponsors for having the guts to support this program. First, check out all the latest predictions on Polymarket. So if you follow politics, everyone's got an opinion. But on Polymarket, you actually get real odds on what's likely to happen. Polymarket is a prediction market where people trade on real events, elections, debates, policy moves, and it doesn't stop at politics. There are markets on the economies, tech, sports, pop culture, and so much more. It's all live, it's transparent, and it gives you a real-time indicator of what people really think is going to happen. So go give it a look at polymarket.com, check it out, and let me know what you think. Let's get into all of the news. And I actually want to start out by zooming way out, the 30,000-foot view, because we are watching in real time how Democrat policy doesn't just hurt people on the ground. It now kills companies in the sky. Spirit Airlines, 34 years in business. The bright yellow planes, everyone made fun of, but everyone also flew on when they wanted to fly without taking out, a second mortgage. I've flown on it a bunch. People always actually, when I was on Spirit, people always grab me and be like, "What are you flying on Spirit?" I was like, you know what? I'm that guy. Like if I can get home an hour earlier, I don't wait for first class. I don't wait for like a luxury liner. It's like if the timing works, I get on the plane. Taking a lot of Spirit back row, middle seat, red eyes, because it just got me home faster. So when I'm done doing what I need to do in the place, I usually just try to get the hell out of there. So now, unfortunately, they're gone. Their final flight landed in Dallas at 1:08 in the morning on Saturday. And by 3 a.m., the entire system had been shut down, affecting 17,000 employees. And look, this isn't just about an airline going bust. What makes this one different, what makes this one another Democrat scandal, is that this one did not have to happen, okay? This one was killed. This wasn't natural causes. This was a hit job. And the fingerprints are all over the crime scene, and they belong to the same usual suspects. Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, the Biden DOJ, and the queen of bad ideas herself, none other than Pocahontas, also known as Elizabeth Warren. So let me walk you through what actually happened, okay? Because they're going to try to blame everything else. The regime media is going to try to bury this. They're going to say it was fuel prices, it was the Iran war. It was anything but what it actually was. Here's the timeline, so pay attention. In 2022, JetBlue Airlines offers to buy Spirit. $3.8 billion in cash, okay? That's a real lifeline, guys. That's a real deal. That's a big deal. The combined airline would have had 9% of the US market, okay? Going up against the other big four who already had 80%, okay? So they were only going to be 9%. The other big four airlines combined to 80. So let's just blend it average, 20% apiece, approximately, okay? So 9 was somehow the problem, but 20 isn't. Spirit flight attendants, the union, they voted yes. Spirit's shareholders voted yes. The pilots, they voted yes. Everyone who actually understood the business, everyone who was actually a stakeholder voted yes. And then walks in Pocahontas with a pen and a victim complex, the usual. Elizabeth Warren, who's never run a business, never met a payroll, never really made anything in her lies that, wasn't basically a fake Cherokee origin story. She starts firing off letters to the DOJ, letters to the DOT, the Department of Transportation, pressure campaigns on the Biden administration saying you can't allow this merger. It'll hurt consumers. It'll raise fares. And the Biden DOJ, ran by Merrick Garland, they sue in federal court to kill the deal. The deal that, again, everyone who was a stakeholder, who actually had something vested, whether it was their job or investment or otherwise, wanted to kill the deal. So, okay? So everyone that wanted it, everyone that was a participant wanted to do the deal. Merrick Garland, Biden DOJ, Elizabeth Warren, they want to kill the deal. And in January of 2024, they win. Judge blocks the merger. JetBlue walks away. Spirit is left standing in the middle of the runway alone with no lifeline. You know what happened next? Well, of course, they filed for bankruptcy within months of the merger getting killed. They had lost $2.5 billion since 2020. The merger was the way out, and the Biden administration took it away, along with those 17,000 jobs and so much else. And after they killed the deal, they took a victory lap. I don't know exactly what they were celebrating, but Elizabeth Warren goes on Twitter March 6, 2024, and writes, and I'm currently quoting her directly, "I've warned for months that a JetBlue Spirit airline merger would have led to fewer flights and higher fares. This is a Biden win for flyers." Really? A Biden win for flyers? Let that sink in. 2 years later, there are no flights. There are no flyers. There's no Spirit. There's just 17,000 unemployed Americans and a bunch of stranded passengers staring at empty terminals, trying to figure out how to get home. Well, here's Secretary Duffy, Saturday morning, laying it all out.
Joe Biden and Pete Buttigieg, along with the Biden DOJ, decided that they did not want that merger to take place. And at the time, the Biden and Buttigieg DOJ bragged and said, as they canceled the option for this merger, that this was a victory for U.S. travelers who deserve lower prices and better choices. Now, many at the time said this was a disaster. This merger should have been allowed. And this today would indicate this is not better for travelers. This is not better for pricing. This is not better for competition. Actually, it's worse. We had an airline go down because the markets were trying to allow two airlines to merge, make them stronger, and offer more competition for the American consumer. Also, Elizabeth Warren at the time cheered the blocking of the merger, saying that this was a Biden win for flyers. So, again, I think it's important that we always look with a keen eye when airlines want to merge. We care about pricing for consumers. We care about competition. But if the markets are saying there needs to be a merger because there's health issues with one of the airlines or more than one airline, we have to take a look at it and make sure we make the right choices. And in this situation, history has judged the denial of the merger between JetBlue and Spirit through the Biden administration with, I think, a view that it was a massive mistake.
Democrats blocked the merger in the name of more competition. And now it's sort of, I don't know, the exact opposite. How is keeping a struggling airline that was going to go bankrupt and ultimately filed a few weeks after they stopped them from doing that, how is that doing what the Democrats intended? And this is the Democratic economic model, basically, in one story, guys. They don't build anything, they don't fix anything, they don't run anything, and they don't understand anything because they've never done anything. Okay? They've never had to actually deal in the real world. You know, they get their pats on the back from the media, whether it's good, bad, indifferent, terrible, usually terrible. They regulate, they block, they sue, they posture, they write strongly worded letters, and then they take selfies at the press conferences. And when the whole thing collapses, when the workers lose all their jobs, when the consumers get stranded at LaGuardia at 5 a.m., they pop up on cable news and act like nobody could have seen this coming. Because for these people, they probably couldn't. Because they don't deal in reality. It's never about results. It's about ideology. It's about the dopamine hit of stopping a corporate merger. It's about the press release. It's about the fundraising email that follows. And meanwhile, real Americans pay the price. Now here's the contrast, because there's been a lot of reporting. The proposed $500 million taxpayer bailout. My father didn't just say, sure, here's a blank check, take $500 million of taxpayer money and go figure it out. That would be the Democrat solution when they want to bail out one of their buddies, again, as long as there's kickbacks to the Democrats and all the other stuff that comes with that. The administration tried. Secretary Duffy said, my father was like a dog on a bone, trying to find a way to save those 17,000 jobs. But the deal had to also make sense. It had to make sense for the taxpayer, for the long-term viability of the airline. They put a real proposal on the table, but your favorite president wasn't going to torch the taxpayer and put icing on a stale cake and try to actually pretend that the damage wasn't already done. You can't turn back time on these things. You can't unkill a deal. That should have happened in 2024, when another corporate entity was going to actually just take over all of these things. But you can be honest about what comes next. And that is the standard, guys. It's not complicated. It's not just something Democrats can't do because they don't think like that. They think like activists. They think like staffers. They think NGO, basically they think like NGO grant recipients.
And Secretary, let me get your take on what took place in terms of Spirit Airlines, because I know that The Democrats did not want Spirit to merge with JetBlue a year ago, and now we see that Spirit Airlines closed operations. The Treasury was supposed to be doing a deal to save this company. Can you tell us what happened?
Sure, Maria. So this is just more of the mess we inherited from the Biden administration. In September 2022, Elizabeth Warren, who loves to write letters, sent a letter to the Justice Department, to the Transport Department, saying that they should oppose the merger with Spirit Airlines. JetBlue wanted to buy them for $3.8 billion. It would have given them much more resiliency. And she and the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg was probably the worst transportation secretary in history when he came to the office. They were against the merger, and if JetBlue had merged with Spirit, we would have all these jobs that were lost yesterday. We had 30 regional airports who have lost service. And I can tell you what happened here. It wasn't Treasury, it was Commerce that was trying to put something together. But the reason we were here was because the Biden administration opposed the merger. We shouldn't have been here in the first place.
Now, the good news is the Trump administration is taking steps to help the former Spirit employees find jobs, to get travelers rebooked on other airlines, and to turn this mess into something that can be fixed and stabilized. And you see that same standard in transportation more broadly, where we're cracking down on fraud. Look at the trucking industry. 28,000 illegal CDLs, okay, commercial driver's licenses, revoked. 20,000 truckers put out of service for not meeting English proficiency rules. Another promise made, another promise kept. Check this out.
Consider this your notice.
Safety is our North Star.
A series of horrific fatal crashes have been caused by dangerous non-domiciled CDL drivers.
Illegal aliens who don't deserve driver's licenses, let alone commercial driver's licenses.
If you are not following the rules and you're not doing the things that you're supposed to be doing, we're going to ensure that we put you out of business.
Well, today, the driver's licenses for thousands of commercial drivers across the state were revoked.
Revoking over 13,000 driver's licenses in the state of California.
Number one, we're issuing an emergency rule that fundamentally overhauls who is eligible for a non-domiciled CDL.
This is about safety. This is making sure that you've got the most qualified people.
That's why under President Trump's leadership, we have launched a nationwide audit of non-domiciled CDLs. Fix your system. Fix your rules. Comply with the law.
That is what enforcement looks like. And by the way, this shouldn't even be controversial. If you're driving an 80,000-pound truck on American highways, I don't know, maybe you should have a valid license. Maybe you should know how to drive. Maybe you should be able to read the road signs. Maybe the system shouldn't be handing out commercial driver's license like, participation trophies because some state bureaucrat didn't want to ask hard questions. Maybe we shouldn't let all those people who've been killed by these people holding these licenses who had no business being in these trucks, maybe we should do something to stop that from ever happening again, since no one wanted to do something to prevent it in the first place. But this is where the left has taken us. Basic safety standards are now extreme. Basic border enforcement is extreme. Basic language requirements for truck drivers, now extreme. But letting unqualified people drive massive rigs around American families, that's compassion, folks. Really? That's what they tell us. I don't get it. I don't see it myself, but it's what they tell us over and over again. And the reason this matters is because the old system was built around one idea. Nobody is accountable. Okay? Nobody's ever accountable. And that brings me to DHS. Because the record DHS shutdown is finally over. 76 days, the longest shutdown of a federal department in American history. And let's be very clear about what happened. Democrats refused to fund critical Homeland Security functions because they wanted to block my father's immigration enforcement agenda. The agenda that literally got him elected into office, that won him all 7 of the swing states, that won him the popular vote. Okay? Democrats objected to funding ICE and Border Patrol and wanted reforms like banning masks and requiring warrants for certain immigration arrests. Democrats decided to hold the department hostage because they couldn't stand the idea of ICE actually doing its job. And Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen laid out the damage.
Well, after 76 days of shutdown, which was an historic shutdown, longest government shutdown in history, it's going to take some time to recover. I mean, were we able to still be mission capable? Yes. Were we able to pick up everything that was being brought to us? No. I mean, just for an example, we had 500 electric bills throughout just the Coast Guard that was in default, and in some cases, we were having to have the State Department and DOW pay the bills. Our gas cards throughout the department, throughout 22 components, was getting turned off, and we was having to have different agencies pay those bills for us. And so we were also having a tremendous amount of morale issues. So we had a large turnover. Just in CISA, we're down 1,100 people. TSA was down 8%, which typically we have about a 4.6% turnover there. We have agencies that were almost completely furloughed, and so now we're getting back up to speed. I'll use one more example too. In the Coast Guard, they have one agency that does nothing but license barges and vessels for United States waters. They're 18,000 vessels behind, and even if we did nothing but just work on the vessels behind, it would take us till the end of July to get them licensed and back on the water. That's going to have a huge impact on what happens throughout transportation, what happens with recreational vehicles, and this is all because the Democrats wanted to have open borders and allow criminals to flow freely on the streets, and it makes absolutely no sense, Shannon. But morale is high, and we're laser focused on delivering for the American people, protecting the homeland.
And I want to get to some of the things.
Democrats wanted open borders. Democrats wanted criminals flowing freely throughout the country because Democrats decided the feelings of illegal aliens, and really the people who would ultimately vote for Democrats in perpetuity, were more important than the security of American citizens. That's their priority. Right? That's the list. Okay? Anyone but America. Not the traveler waiting in line, not the Coast Guard family wondering about pay, not the cyber team trying to protect infrastructure, not the border agent trying to stop criminals, rapists, drug smuggling. The priority was the activist class. The priority was cable news resistance theater. The priority was making sure ICE couldn't enforce the law too effectively. And then, when the damage shows up, they say, how could this happen? It didn't happen by accident. It happened because you did it. You can't shut down Homeland Security for 76 days and then act like you're the adult in the room. You can't attack ICE and Border Patrol every day and then pretend you care about safety. You can't break the agency, blame Trump, and expect Americans not to see the pattern. And while Democrats were playing games with Homeland Security, my father was showing what real strength looks like overseas.
Right. Well, I think the market has been pretty consistent. The fact is that what the president is seeing is that the blockade is working. It's putting an enormous amount of pressure on Iran. And Iran's threats to put mines in the straits have even made it so that humanitarian aid that, of course, we would let through to Iran, that there are a lot of those ship captains that are wary of going to Iranian ports because they're worried about where the Iranians have put the mines. And so, you know, I go down to the sit room many times a week and get briefed on what's going on in Iran, and they're an economy that's really on the precipice of extreme calamity. They are having a hyperinflation. They're starting to have hunger. The bottom line is that the pressure on the great American people, because of these people who are like really intent on American and Israeli destruction with their nuclear weapons, are still in power. One last thing, Margaret, I don't know if you noticed, but the UN human rights folks came out this week condemning Iran because they're killing people who are trying to stand up to this regime that's potentially, you know, causing starvation and even famine.
That's what leverage looks like, guys. Not pallets of cash, not begging the mullahs to please be nice, not pretending a strongly worded statement from Brussels is a foreign policy platform. Pressure. Economic pressure, military pressure, diplomatic pressure. The kind of pressure that makes bad actors understand that there are consequences and accountability. And of course, the Europeans started chirping from the cheap seats. Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz tried to criticize the United States over Iran, talked about humiliation, questioned the American strategy, basically doing what European leaders love to do, which is lecture America while literally depending entirely on America for their defense. And then my father pushed back, saying, "We're cutting 5,000 troops from Germany." Check it out.
Why is the U.S. removing troops from Germany?
We're going to cut way down, and we're cutting a lot further than 5,000. Thank you very much.
All right, so you're listening to President Trump just make a few remarks there as he boards Air Force One from Palm Beach, Florida.
And now, suddenly, the German Chancellor is saying the United States is and will remain Germany's most important partner in NATO. It didn't sound like they were much of a partner. Hasn't for a while. And that Iran must now not be allowed to acquire nuclear weapons. Watch him yourself.
And quote, "I'm not giving up on working with the transatlantic relationship, nor am I giving up on working with Donald Trump." Although last night, President Trump says that there could be an even larger withdrawal.
Why is the U.S. removing troops from Germany?
We're going to cut way down, and we're cutting a lot further than 5,000. Thank you very much.
Now, in terms of this latest announcement, Project Freedom, the president says that this will aim to free up companies.
It's amazing how that works, guys. It's like magic. For years, the so-called experts told us the way to lead was to apologize. Never worked for me in any other capacity in my life, but that was the way to lead, according to them. Apologize to Europe, apologize to Iran, apologize to China, apologize to everyone. Except, the American people getting stuck with the bill. Don't apologize to them. They don't deserve that, obviously. Not according to Democrats and the European technocrats and the usual suspects. But when America actually leads, when America says, no, we're not going to subsidize your weakness while you criticize our strength, people get the message pretty fast. And by the way, this is not complicated, guys. Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. Europe can't keep freeloading forever. NATO can't be a cocktail party with an American credit card. And America can't keep acting like every other country's problem is automatically our responsibility while our own citizens get ignored. That's the Trump doctrine. Strength, leverage, results. And that's why the contrast is so obvious, because Democrats don't just oppose strength abroad. They oppose basic order at home. Look at the Supreme Court decision on Louisiana's race-based congressional map. The court blocked a map that was built around racial gerrymandering, and the left immediately went into meltdown mode. Donna Brazile, the one who gave Hillary Clinton the answers to the debate with my father prior to the debate, went on ABC and said the Supreme Court is bringing us back to, come on guys, you know where they're going, Jim Crow. We're going back to Jim Crow because we can't have race-based electoral maps. Not sure how that's Jim Crow or Jim Crow 2.0 or whatever it is, but here she is.
1 out of 3 people in Louisiana who are black don't have representation if this goes into effect. So, no, when you make it harder for black people to vote, we're going to show up. And that's how many of us feel. It's not just anger. It's disappointment. It's betrayal. Because, again, I watch my daddy. He comes home with medals. He comes home fighting for his country, and he could not vote. You are bringing us back to Jim Crow, and we do not want to go back to Jim Crow.
Chris, you want to jump in?
That is the playbook, folks. If Democrats can sort voters by race, that's democracy. If Democrats can carve up districts, Swiss cheese this thing to hell, and protect their power, that's representation. If Democrats can build an entire political machine around racial categories, that's justice. But the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court says, I don't know, maybe the Constitution doesn't allow you to treat Americans like racial chess pieces. Suddenly, it's Jim Crow. Oh my God, it's Jim Crow. You can't make it make sense. And it's the same racket everywhere. Just like I said last week. Race as a map-making tool, race as a funding tool, race as a hiring tool, race as a censorship tool, and race as a political weapon, right? There's a reason, like New England, you look at some of the states up there, 40% Republican, 43% Republican, 45% Republican, 42% Republican, across the board. Zero congressional representation, okay? If the maps can't be drawn around race forever, the political machine gets exposed. If Iran responds to pressure, the Obama-Biden appeasement racket gets exposed. That's why they're panicking. Not because Trump is chaotic, but because Trump is forcing order on systems that were designed to operate in complete and total chaos. Hell, just look at the recent news on energy down in Venezuela. The U.S. Energy Dominance Council is coordinating and leading new pathways to investment. The Venezuelan government is cooperating. We're making America stronger and making the Western Hemisphere more secure, while also taking care of our worst enemies in that region and getting them the hell out of there. Seems like a no-brainer. Check it out.
For the first time since 2019, direct flights from the U.S. to Venezuela are back in the air.
This flight marks the transition from dialogue to action.
We are committed to a U.S.-aligned Venezuela that produces real results for Venezuelans and for Americans.
Under the leadership of the president, we've moved at lightning speed to get all the things in place we needed to do to establish air service.
We are witnessing the rebuilding of our economic ties, the reopening of Venezuela to global commerce, and the reconnecting of our two countries.
President Trump is a man of action, and what you're seeing today is action take place.
Under President Trump's leadership, the United States remains fully committed to Venezuela's economic recovery. Today, the results speak for themselves. Direct flights are back. Commerce is flowing. Venezuela's economic engine is ramping up, and we're just getting started.
And once Americans see it, they don't unsee it. Everything we were told was impossible is now looking almost inevitable. And America is rewriting the map when it comes to energy independence and energy dominance. Check this out.
Well, it was a great trip, huge celebration of the partnership that exists today thanks to President Trump between Venezuela and the United States. Look, President Trump is a man of action. He wants to see progress. He wants to see action take place. And you saw action and progress in three important sectors. Transportation, the first daily flights backed from the U.S. to Venezuela. Energy, oil and gas. You saw three independent oil and gas companies, new entrants, signing deals with Venezuela. And on mining, you saw a huge landmark mining deal, the first of its kind, for gold, for coal, into Venezuela. All of these are showing the tremendous progress in just a short period of time between the U.S. and Venezuela. That's exactly the kind of message we want to send to the world, that relationship is strong, that now you have flights going down there, so it's now employees, it's people interested in investing, it's people interested in being down there and seeing their family members coming down to Venezuela. There was a huge party in Miami of people interested in wanting to go down. And then even on top of that, American Airlines, on the very day of the first flight, they came out and announced they're going to do two trips a day now down to Venezuela. So the progress is happening at Trump speed. This would have taken months, if not years, to get to this point, and we're seeing it in a matter of weeks. That's Trump speed. That's the kind of stuff we're doing on our side, and you're seeing the same on the Venezuelan side.
And guys, we have another familiar face sponsoring the show now, Goldco. Gold just surged past $5,000 an ounce. Silver blew past 100. And the U.S. just added silver to the critical mineral list, meaning it's now considered crucial for American security and economic survival. This isn't speculation. This is real. That's why I've renewed my partnership with the #1 rated gold company, Goldco. A+ plus rated by the BBB, the Better Business Bureau, and they've helped Americans place over $3 billion in gold and silver. So visit donjrgold.com, DONJR gold.com, to get a free 2026 gold and silver kit. And because you're part of this audience, you get up to 10% back in bonus silver or gold just for getting started. Again, that's donjrgold.com. Do it now. Educate yourself. What do you have to lose? And by the way, if you want to know why Doge mattered, if you want to know why ending the status quo matters, we're seeing the evidence more and more every day. Luke Rasek at the Daily Wire has a new investigation using Medicaid billing data that Doge forced out into the open. And what they found in Ohio is insane. Absolutely freaking insane. Ohio spent about $1 billion on home health care in 2024 alone. And what are taxpayers paying for exactly? Homemaking, chores, cooking, cleaning, and I'm quoting here, companionship and conversation. $1 billion? So in plain English, guys, Medicaid may be paying people to hang out with their own relatives while some middleman company bills the government for it. I mean, think of how insane that is. Like, do I get a paycheck to stay at home? I'd love to play with my kids more. Can you pay me to do that on top of everything else? This is the perfect government scam. The service happens inside a private home. So, who checks if the worker, actually showed up? Who checks what they actually did? Who checks whether this was real care or just a family visit with a billing code attached? Apparently nobody. Daily Wire says one building in Columbus had 94 different companies signed up to bill Medicaid. 94 companies in one building. And that one building alone billed taxpayers $66 million. One building, $66 million to go visit your relative. Maybe even live with your relative. Might as well get paid to sit home and, clean up, because why not, I guess. Okay, $66 million over several years. Think about that. That's not healthcare. And this is why the left hates transparency. Because once you can actually see the data, the moral lecture falls apart. They told you there was no waste. There's a lot of waste, folks. They told you there was no fraud. There's a lot of fraud. They told you Doge was cruel for looking. No. What's cruel is bankrupting the country while Medicaid middlemen get rich off of programs that are supposed to help the vulnerable. Open the books. Follow the money. Name the companies. Cut off the scam. Because Americans are sick of being told there's no money for them, while there always seems to be money for some shell company, for some fake provider, for some fraud factory hiding behind compassion, for some illegal immigrant milking the system and then kicking the money back to Al-Shabaab in Somalia. And why are so many of these fraudsters foreigners? Why are so many of them illegal aliens? Because they exploit the system and kick back to the Democrat machine, of course. Just like USAID, just like Act Blue, just like the Minnesota daycare fraud, just like with racially gerrymandered maps. It's a political machine completely dependent on fraud. And I do think this is becoming more and more obvious to anyone paying attention. But we do have to pay attention and make sure that others are too. You've got people in this country who are trying to make things work, and you've got lunatics who'd rather watch the whole thing burn. You've got leaders who go on to the table with common sense, and others who want to have debates about things that have already been totally obvious since the beginning of time, like whether we should have a border, whether genders exist, whether you can change them, whether we should punish violent criminals. Things that don't really even need a debate because the answers are so obvious if you're not an imbecile or milking the system. You've got folks who believe in playing by the rules, and folks will smear you as a radical, as a racist, as a misogynist, as a homophobe, whatever it may be, for even suggesting there should be rules. And when it comes down to it, one group treats power like a tool to look out for the good of the country. The other treats it like something to feed back into the machine that lines their pockets and maintains their power. That's the line right there. Why? It's why I always say to keep staying on the offense. Keep staying engaged. Okay? So guys, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you have an awesome week. Sorry about the Tuesday show, but again, just been a little bit of a crazy one for me. Make sure we're getting this message out, okay? Make sure you're subscribing so you don't miss one of these episodes. Make sure you like, okay? Make sure you take this episode and just share it with your friends right now. Share it with 10 friends. Hit the like button. Share it with 10 friends. Check out our incredible sponsors down below in the video description, okay? It's not easy to do this. To fund this show, support those who share your values and are also in the fight with you, okay? Check us out on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. If you or your friends get their podcast that way as well, make sure to like, share, subscribe there as well. We got to get it out, and you guys are the front line of defense of that. So, as always, guys, stay strong, stay informed, stay engaged, and always stay a little bit triggered. I'll talk to you all again very soon.